A newborn enters the world. He quickly recognizes his mother's soothing voice, but sounds he does not recognize in the environment grasp his attention quickly and often startle him. A 3-month-old has a favorite stuffed animal that she holds frequently. Other than wanting it near, she seems to pay little attention to it. When she is given a new stuffed animal of another color, she examines the toy closely. A 4-month-old will happily eat his banana baby food, but puts up a fight about eating new foods that are introduced as his mother tries to feed him. These are all examples of habituation. Habituation is a decrease in response to a stimulus after repeated exposure to the same stimulus. In other words, repeated stimuli receive progressively less processing from the brain. Because of this, novel information and repeated information are treated differently by the brain. It's been shown that infants habituate to different stimuli, and they use this habituation to draw conclusions and learn about their environment. Habituation can affect this learning process in different ways. Many important studies of infant perceptual development have relied on the concept of habituation. Perceptual development refers to the development of the 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, touch, and smell. Let's look at this perceptual development in an infant. What do we know about the development of the 5 senses at this stage? We used to believe that newborn babies were extremely limited in their perceptions of the world around them. A couple of old myths that illustrate this are that babies cannot see at birth or are colorblind, and that babies cannot hear at birth because their ears are filled with mucus and fluid. We now know that notions like this are false, and that newborns have some amazing capabilities. Hearing. An infant can hear and react to sound even before he is born. In the uterus, an unborn child hears familiar voices, its mother's heartbeat, and other internal sounds. These familiar sounds often comfort them once they are born. Have you ever seen a baby become calm at the sound of a mother's voice or ocean sounds? This may be because these sounds are already familiar to them. The child may startle at sudden loud noises as well. Sounds like this are less familiar to the infant. Differentiation between unfamiliar and familiar sounds will eventually assist with the process of learning verbal language. Sight. A newborn's vision at birth is about 2200. He can clearly focus on objects about 7 to 18 inches away, and his favorite thing to look at is the human face. This is convenient since 7 to 18 inches is also about the same distance as a mother's face while the child is being held or fed. A newborn prefers contrasting dark and light color patterns or shiny, slow-moving objects. If an object catches the newborn's attention, he can track its movement in an arc above its head. This is a far cry from the myth that babies cannot see at birth. Smell. From the time of birth, an infant can distinguish his mother's scent. He can even tell the difference between his mother's breast milk and formula or another mother's breast milk. In the first week of life, he will learn the differences in smells and start to prefer pleasant scents to unpleasant ones. Taste. Unsurprisingly, an infant will prefer sweet-tasting substances. This makes sense since breast milk is a sweet-tasting substance. He will distinguish and react differently to salty, bitter, or sour substances as well. Since an infant is only fed breast milk or formula in the first few months of life, the introduction of new taste requires some adjustment. It may take a few attempts, but over time, he will learn to tolerate and even like new tastes. Touch. Inside the uterus, the unborn child is used to the feel of pressure all around them. For this reason, swaddling newborns in a tight blanket helps them feel secure and helps them transition to the outside world. He will not like the discomfort of being too cold or too hot. An infant also likes to be caressed, held, and snuggled. In fact, he needs these nurturing touches in order to thrive. It is important that our infant's environment is safe because as he explores the world around him, you can often observe him touching everything within his reach with both his hands and his mouth. Our insight into what newborns can perceive has changed dramatically from the past belief that the perceptions are extremely limited. An infant can recognize many things in the world around them through this perceptual development, or the development of the 5 senses. An infant can distinguish pleasant and unpleasant odors and identify his mother's smell at birth. He can also distinguish her voice and be startled by unfamiliar sounds. His vision allows him to focus clearly on his mother's face during feeding time and track movement. The sweet taste of breast milk is pleasing to an infant's taste buds, and he can distinguish other less familiar tastes as well. He likes to be held, be warm and comfortable, and needs to feel pleasant touch to thrive. Many important studies on infant perceptual development have relied on the concept of habituation. Habituation is a decrease in response to a stimulus after repeated exposure to the same stimulus. In other words, the brain needs to spend less time processing something the more familiar with it is. Novel information will be treated differently by the brain than repeated information. Infants use habituation to draw conclusions and learn about their environment.